My mom let her dog knock over my daughter, breaking her wrist. She needs to learn to stay out of the way, she said. My brother shrugged. She's clumsy anyway, I said. Nothing, I took my daughter to the hospital, and 4 days later, I filed a report. Animal control took the dog, and my lawyer took over from there. That was the last time I left my daughter with my parents. Because of my mother's selfishness, she nearly lost her hair later. It sounds dramatic, but that's how it went down. I've gone over it 1,000 times since, wondering how I didn't see it coming. My wife, Isabella, always said my parents played favorites. I used to wave it off, thinking she was being sensitive. Still, I couldn't after what happened, not after how they treated Molly, not after what they said, and not after the screaming match that ended with Isabella's fingers tangled in my mother's hair, pulling so hard the neighbors ran over, thinking someone was being killed. It started when Isabella and I had to be away for work, just 3 days. We both had back-to-back conferences, one in San Francisco and the other in Atlanta. Since our schedules lined up perfectly, it felt efficient to leave Molly with my folks for a long weekend. They'd offered plenty of times, saying they missed having a little one around. Of course, by little one, they meant Brianna, my brother Greg's daughter. Brianna was the golden child, loud, athletic, fearless, everything they thought a granddaughter should be. Molly was quieter, more sensitive. She loved drawing and reading, not a crowd pleaser, which made her invisible to them. Still, I thought it would be fine, just a few days, nothing major. We dropped her off Friday afternoon. I kissed her goodbye, promised souvenirs. Molly clung to Isabella a little, saying she had a weird feeling. I should have listened. When we got back Sunday evening, the house was too quiet, no running to the door, no smile from my mom, just the TV humming and Greg yelling something from the kitchen. Then I saw Molly on the couch, pale and small, her left arm wrapped in a cast. Isabella dropped her suitcase and ran over. I didn't even ask what happened before my mom said, too casually, she got knocked over by Max. She was standing in his way. Max, their 90-pound golden retriever. We told them a dozen times to keep that dog away from Molly. He was never trained, always jumping, barking, chasing kids. She needs to learn to stay out of the way, my mom added. Greg, leaning against the counter, not even pretending to care, just shrugged and said, she's clumsy anyway. I didn't say anything, not yet. I picked Molly up gently, asked if it hurt. She nodded, then said something I'll never forget. Grandma said it was my fault, and Brianna laughed. That's when Isabella lost it. She turned on my mother so fast no one could react, screaming, cursing, hair pulling. I've never seen her that furious. My dad jumped up from his recliner like he'd been shocked. Greg shouted something, and within seconds, it was chaos. Neighbors came to the door, one even stepped inside, trying to break it up. Isabella was still yelling when I finally pulled her off my mom and got her outside. She was shaking, furious tears in her eyes. We drove straight to the hospital to get Molly checked again. I didn't say a word until we were halfway there, then looked at Isabella. This proves it. They never loved her, I said. They only loved Brianna. To them, Molly's just in the way. She didn't answer, just stared out the window, jaw clenched. The next morning, I made a decision. I filed the report, animal control took Max, and I called my lawyer. By the time I filed, I wasn't even angry anymore, just clear, cold. That's what happens when the people supposed to love your child treat her like a nuisance. You stop giving chances. You stop explaining. I never thought I'd sue my mother, but that's exactly what I did. 4 days after we got Molly back, animal control came. Max, their overgrown, untrained golden retriever, was gone by lunchtime. I got a string of texts from my mom afterward. The first called me heartless, the second accused Isabella of brainwashing me, and the third was a screenshot of some quote about forgiveness. I didn't respond. Greg called that night, saying I was overreacting, that kid's fall, it happens. He asked what I was trying to do. I said I wasn't trying anything, I was just done pretending. That's when he dropped the line that made Isabella clench her jaw and walk out. Come on, man, Molly's always been a little dramatic. Maybe she's milking it. I almost laughed. Instead, I hung up. The next day, Molly told us more. She sat between us on the couch, her wrist in a fresh cast, her voice soft but steady. She said Grandma made her eat alone at the little table in the laundry room because Brianna wanted the dining room to herself. Grandpa told her not to touch the TV remote because smart girls don't watch cartoons. Brianna shoved her in the backyard once, and when she cried, Greg said if she wanted to be part of the family, she had to toughen up. The worst part wasn't what they said, it was how they looked at her, like she didn't belong, like she was someone else's problem. Isabella didn't say a word until Molly was asleep, then turned to me and said flatly, they bullied her. I nodded. She thinks your mom hit her, she added. I knew what she meant, not a slap, but something casual and mean. A push, a grab, a yank by the arm, the kind of thing a grown-up does when they're just mean enough to think no one will find out. We didn't confront them. We didn't call. We called a lawyer instead. The papers were filed within a week, suing my mother for neglect, emotional distress, and reckless endangerment. We added my father and Greg to the report for their part in covering it up and refusing medical attention for hours. It wasn't about money, it was about making them answer for what they'd done. 2 days after they got the notice, my parents showed up at our house. My mom was in tears, my dad looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Greg stood behind them, arms crossed, like he was guarding a fortress. "We didn't mean for any of this," my mom said. "Please, Alex, she's just a child. They say all sorts of things, you know that." I asked which part wasn't true. She didn't answer. Then she said she'd apologize to Molly if it would make this go away, like our daughter's pain could be erased with a few sorries whispered through gritted teeth. Greg didn't say much until I said I wasn't dropping it. Then he looked me dead in the eye and said, "If that's how it's going to be, you're out of the inheritance." I stared, then laughed, I couldn't help it. That night, I logged into our family's joint account, the one we all had access to, supposedly for emergencies. My father used it to remodel the deck, and Greg for a new car. I let it slide for years, but not anymore. I pulled out my third, froze the rest with my lawyer's help, and access was restricted until the suit was resolved. My phone rang for 2 days straight. Greg begged, then threatened, then tried guilt, saying he couldn't feed his family, that he'd put everything into that new car and had nothing left for bills. My dad left 3 voicemails about betrayal and disgrace, saying, "What would your grandfather say?" I told them they'd have to figure it out, just like Molly had to with a broken wrist and no one on her side. Isabella sat beside me through it all, silent. When the last message came through, she looked at me and said, "If anyone touches our daughter again, they won't have hair left to pull." I'd never seen her like this, fierce, unforgiving. I almost didn't recognize her. Deep down, I felt something I didn't want to admit, discomfort. I had condemned my mother, yet I believed she deserved it. I didn't expect anyone to take our side. My parents collected loyalty like coins, years of hosting holiday dinners, lending money with strings attached, showing up at every school event for Greg's kids like politicians on a campaign trail. Most people only saw their polished, generous side. So when the lawsuit became real, I expected silence, maybe a few backhanded messages or quiet blocks from relatives on social media. But that's not what happened. It started with a message from my Aunt Linda, my dad's younger sister. She hadn't spoken to me in over a year, not since she accidentally left Isabella out of a family invitation. She asked if we could talk, then said something I'll never forget. "You're not wrong, Alex. You're just the first one who had the guts to say something." I didn't understand at first, but then she told me stories, how my mom was hard on me as a kid, belittled Isabella during her bridal shower, bragged about Brianna being the one with real potential. Linda said she'd kept quiet because speaking up meant being cut off, and no one wanted to be exiled from the family fund. Then came the cousins, quiet messages at first, then longer ones. Several admitted they weren't shocked about Molly, having seen how she was treated at family events, ignored, corrected for tiny things, forced to share with Brianna while Brianna never shared back. One cousin sent a video from a barbecue the previous summer where Molly tried to join the kids on the trampoline, and Greg told her to go find something quieter to do. My mom laughed and handed Brianna a popsicle. That video sat like a stone in my stomach, all those moments we missed, and all the people who saw but said nothing. But now they were speaking up, and it lit a fire. My parents tried to contain the fallout. First, the guilt route, my mom sent a long email about how hard parenting was in their generation, how we all make mistakes. My dad followed with a voicemail full of fatherly disappointment and passive-aggressive sighs. Then came soft threats, "You know this lawsuit will tear everyone apart. Are you willing to destroy everything over one accident?" I didn't reply. Greg came next, alone, no flashy car, no smug look, just bags under his eyes and an oversized hoodie. He stood on our porch like a man with nowhere to go. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He said he was sorry, sort of, like someone reading a script. Then he tried to meet my eyes and said, "You don't have to do this. We can fix it. You can be part of the family again." I asked the question I'd been waiting to ask since we picked Molly up, did Mom ever hit her? He blinked, looked away, then said, "You know how she gets when she's stressed." That wasn't a no. That was enough. Later that night, I went into the joint account. It was drained low, Greg's new BMW, my dad's patio renovation, my uncle's failing vape shop. I pulled the rest of my third and locked it down through our lawyer. Greg found out within hours. The call came at 2 a.m. panicked, furious. He said he couldn't pay the mortgage, that he'd stretched his savings for Brianna's dance competition fees, that I was ruining lives. I told him they ruined something, too, smaller, quieter, more defenseless. The next morning, my dad left a 4-minute voicemail. I didn't listen to the whole thing, caught something about betrayal and "you'll regret this," then deleted it. But the message was clear, I was out of the will, out of the family, out of everything. I called Isabella to the kitchen and told her. She poured coffee, smiled, and said, "Perfect. Now we don't have to pretend anymore." Then she pulled out her phone and transferred all remaining household accounts out of joint connections, credit cards, health insurance, everything. She cut the final cords like she'd been waiting years for the chance. It felt like escaping a cult. Still, I felt that twist in my gut, not guilt, but something close, the weight of suing my own family. Then I saw Molly that afternoon, lying on the couch, sketching a fox in her notebook. She looked calm, safe, like she finally belonged. And I remembered why we started this. When the court date arrived, it felt surreal. We'd been living in this in-between space for weeks, lawyers, documents, threats from my family growing quieter but more venomous. I half expected my mother to pull a last-minute trick, but as I buttoned my shirt and watched Molly clutching her sketchbook like armor, I knew it was real. Isabella walked in, dressed sharp and cold, like she'd been preparing for this since the day we picked Molly up with that cast. We arrived at the courthouse early. My mother showed up 20 minutes late, Greg right behind her, like a twisted entourage. She wore a beige coat and dark sunglasses indoors, like a celebrity dodging paparazzi. Greg looked sleepless but carried himself like the favorite son, the protector of the legacy. My father didn't come, shame or arrogance, I don't know. The courtroom was quiet, everything echoed. My mother didn't look at us, just stared at the table like this wasn't happening. The judge was direct, no nonsense. The case was civil but serious, child endangerment, neglect, emotional harm. Our lawyer laid it out with precision, the delayed hospital visit, the untreated fracture, the recorded call where my mother said, she needs to learn to stay out of the way. Every piece added weight. Then came Molly's statement, read by our lawyer. She made me eat alone in the laundry room. She said I was annoying and Brianna was more fun. She told me to stop crying because it was my fault. I don't feel safe with them. My mother didn't flinch, but Greg looked down, a flicker of regret, maybe embarrassment, but the first sign he'd realized the line was crossed long ago. Their lawyer tried the usual. Molly was sensitive, my mother was overwhelmed, it was just one bad weekend. He even said, we're talking about family, not strangers. The judge didn't bite. The judgment was clear, my mother was found liable, civilly negligent. The fine was steep, more than she thought she'd owe for what she called a parenting mistake. But the worst part for her was the restraining order. Molly was protected, legally, officially. My mother could no longer contact her or come within 500 feet. No more visits, no more family events, no more pretending. It was on the record, public, permanent. After the ruling, my mother stood slowly, like moving through water, and walked out. Greg followed but glanced at me, his face blank but his eyes heavy. We didn't celebrate, no cheering, no hugs, just a slow walk to the parking lot. Isabella held Molly's hand, I walked behind, watching the two most important people in my life, wondering how we ever trusted anyone else with her. At the car, Molly asked if we could get pancakes, saying she felt hungry for the first time in days. That afternoon, we went to her favorite diner, sat in a booth by the window. Isabella smiled, just enough. I watched her run a hand through Molly's hair, and I knew what she was thinking. This wasn't just a win, it was a warning. Back home, the silence settled differently, not heavy, not dark, just real. But I knew my parents weren't done. My father was too proud, Greg too bitter. Cutting me out of the inheritance was just their warm-up. They were going to come for us in their way. They just didn't realize we weren't scared anymore. I thought it would quiet down after the ruling, but I misjudged them. The real selfishness hadn't even started. A week after the verdict, my dad made a move none of us saw coming. I got a notice from the county clerk's office. He put the family lake house up for sale, the one in the family for over 40 years, sworn to be passed down to us and our kids. The same lake house where we spent every 4th of July, where Molly's drawings were still taped to the fridge. He didn't mention it, just listed it, hoping I'd be too busy to notice. I called the listing agent, who confirmed he'd said the family wasn't using it anymore and he needed to liquidate for health expenses. A lie. He just wanted to ensure I got nothing, not even memories. I didn't confront him, I sent my lawyer instead. We had shared ownership, something he forgot or thought I wouldn't challenge. The sale was frozen within 48 hours. Then came Greg's stunt. He announced online, loudly, a family-centered GoFundMe, claiming his daughter's dance career was threatened by a sudden financial loss from a legal battle none of us wanted. He didn't name names, but it was clear who the villain was. He posted a photo of Brianna in her dance uniform, captioning it, "Real family sticks together no matter what." It was manipulative, emotional, and dripping with fake humility. People started donating, strangers, extended relatives, old high school friends. Some left comments like, "You deserve better than betrayal." He turned our pain into his pity parade. Isabella wanted to call him out publicly, typed a post, but I stopped her, not because he didn't deserve it, but because I knew this wasn't his endgame. He wanted us to react, to prove we were unstable, vindictive. I wasn't giving him that. Instead, I gathered every screenshot, every donation note, every false statement, and handed them to our lawyer. 2 days later, he got a cease and desist. The silence after was worse, it meant they were planning something else. And I was right. The next bomb dropped on a Thursday evening, just as we finished dinner. Molly was upstairs painting, Isabella was sipping tea. I got an email from a property attorney I didn't recognize. Greg and my dad had filed paperwork to restructure the family trust without me. The trust, created by my grandfather, was about legacy, land, documents, and history meant to stay in the family. Now they were trying to dissolve the original terms and create a new trust, excluding me, my wife, and my daughter entirely. The audacity was almost funny. Isabella shook her head, then smiled, not amused, but certain. They're cutting themselves out, she said. They just don't realize it yet. We moved fast. Our lawyer filed an injunction, submitted documents proving bad faith. A judge would decide if they could touch the trust again. But this was never just about property or money, it was about control. And now that they didn't have it, they were lashing out like wild animals, destroying everything, hoping we'd come crawling back. They didn't realize we were never coming back. They chose their favorite, their lies, and now it was unraveling. By the trust hearing, we were past caring about winning. We'd won what mattered, Molly. Her wrist had healed, her drawings filled the fridge again. She started sleeping through the night, even asked Isabella about dance class, her idea, not ours. That felt bigger than any verdict. Still, we showed up. My father did too, but he didn't look like the man who barked orders at dinner or puffed his chest at family gatherings. He looked smaller, like someone realizing his empire was a house of cards. Greg sat beside him, tense, trying not to look nervous. His GoFundMe had been shut down, several donors asked for refunds. One even emailed me to apologize for supporting such a toxic campaign. The judge reviewed everything: the unauthorized attempt to restructure the trust, the exclusion, the cease and desist violations, every spiteful move. He pointed to the original terms and ruled the trust untouched. Greg and my father's rights to manage assets were permanently revoked. I was reinstated as trustee with full authority over the estate. Greg didn't stay to hear the final words, he walked out without looking back. The real end came quietly a week later. My father called, I let it go to voicemail. He didn't ask for anything, just said he hoped I was happy, that he never expected his son to turn on him, that he hoped Brianna would know what a real family looked like. I saved the message, not for evidence, just as a reminder. We moved a few months later, not drastic, just out of the old neighborhood, away from the web of pity and side glances from people who smiled at barbecues but now didn't know what to say. The new house was quieter, smaller, but ours. Every corner felt like peace. We didn't tell anyone we were leaving. Isabella and I packed, Molly helped tape boxes, drawing little foxes on them. The day we left, Isabella turned to me on the porch and said, "Never again." I nodded. I knew what she meant. We changed our numbers, kept our address private, no more holiday invites, no more pretending. We didn't need reconciliation, we needed space and peace. As for Greg and my father, Greg sold the BMW. His wife left him 2 months later, taking Brianna to live with her parents. My dad tried to reactivate the family fund under a new name, it didn't work. No one trusted him anymore. The family name meant nothing without control. They lost everything by treating Molly like she was nothing. Funny how that works. I never told Molly the full story, just enough so she knew we believed her, protected her, and wouldn't let her near people who didn't. That's all she needed. She's stronger now, not harder, just sure of herself. Sometimes Isabella brings it up late at night when the house is quiet and Molly's asleep. She doesn't cry or get angry, just says, they had one job, and they failed. So we moved on. We built something new, and they're still stuck in the ashes of their selfishness. Last night, something reminded me how far we've come. Molly had a school art show. Her piece, a painting of a small fox under a tree at dusk, was front and center, not because it won, but because her teacher said it made people stop and stare. It was quiet, thoughtful, just like her. After, we got ice cream. She asked to sit outside, even though it was cold. Isabella wrapped her coat around Molly's shoulders, and we sat, watching her eat slowly, like she was saving the moment. Then Molly said, "I like our life now. I feel safe." Isabella looked at me, her eyes glassy. Mine too, if I'm honest. It wasn't a big moment, no fireworks, no dramatic music, just a girl, her ice cream, and the weight we'd been carrying lifting, even just a little. We're not perfect, never will be, but we're free. And Molly is happy. After everything, that's more than enough.